Relatable characters keep the reader steady in an unfamiliar world. Hi, I'm Jenna and I write science fiction fantasy novels, and I help you put the magic back into writing. So yes, my number one tip is that relatable characters will keep your reader steady in a world that is so unfamiliar to them. If you're writing a sci-fi novel with crazy different planets or aliens, technology that we would not see for another 1,000 years on Earth, things in the far, far future, or jumping into the far past and then the far future because there's time travel. All these really intricate things in sci-fi that can get very confusing. If you have a relatable character that the reader can see themselves in, it makes the world a lot more easy to digest. A great example of this is in the show Futurama. We have a poor little pizza delivery boy from the year 1999/2000 who at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve gets stuck in a freezer pod and ends up freezing for 1,000 years and wakes up New Year's Eve for the next, millennia, I think is what it is. So he's stuck 1,000 years in the future with technology that obviously he's never seen before. And during the time when the show was airing, all of these different species, the history of the planet of Earth changing, having a new New York because the old one is underground and is filled with mutants who live in the sewers. A lot of crazy shit happens in that show, but we are able to relate to it because we relate to Philip J. Fry, the little pizza delivery boy. And why do we relate to him? Because he's genuinely so confused about the world around him. He's as confused as the Watcher is, and you learn the entire world through him. Now, this doesn't always work in science fiction novels. Obviously, it's easiest if you have someone who's being introduced to the world alongside the character, but what if your character has grown up in that world their entire life? They know everything right off the bat, and you can't make them relatable in this confusing kind of way, where they're also discovering the world. But there's plenty of other ways to make your character relatable, and that doesn't mean that they necessarily have to even be a good character. They can still be an anti-hero or even the bad guy and be relatable because they have relatable wants and needs. From my book, Spaceborne, one of the very first things we find out about Soraya is that she is deeply, deeply traumatized, and that she absolutely loves and adores her family, but she hasn't been able to see them in a long time. And she also feels immense guilt and immense shame for the things that she's done, and she feels like she is deserving of the pain that she has given and of the trauma that she's endured. This might not be relatable for everybody, but I feel like it's relatable to the readers who most gravitate towards the main character Soraya and people who gravitate towards Spaceborne, the novel as a whole. So how did I make Soraya relatable so that people instantly grabbed onto this strange world where she is actively being an assassin trying to kill somebody while also being egged on by an alien to do it? Yeah, that's the first chapter of Spaceborne if you haven't read it already. I think I have it up for free on my Patreon. I'll link it down below. And you don't have to join the Patreon to read it. And yeah, that's not going to be relatable to everybody. Not everyone's going to know what immense shame at what you've done feels like. Not everyone's going to have a deep burning wish to see your family again after a long time and you can't see them because of things that you have done. But for people where any of these things resonate, they're going to feel and empathize with the main character. And at the very bare minimum, she's highly annoyed at this alien. And honestly, you as a reader can tell, and you are also annoyed with that alien, so you can empathize with her and relate to her because she is severely pissed off and very annoyed. So from big things to small things, make your character relatable in the world. That way they can understand and empathize with them when they don't understand or empathize with the world around them. Next is completely take what I said with a grain of salt, because is the world really that unfamiliar? How can you parallel your futuristic scientific world to the current world that we as humans live in? What current social issues or topics are we facing in our modern age that might be made worse or solved in the future? Anyone who says that writing and books are not political is an absolute liar. The majority of books throughout all of time have had some political undertones to them. But if you're reading older literature, you might not understand the historical context in which the book was written. So you might not think that they are political, but they are. So think about how for yourself you can bring up those kinds of topics in your own writing. My next step is that world building is everything, and I love world building, but so many people hate it. So if you guys want a whole series on world building, do let me know down below on what specific questions you have. That way I can answer them in that series. Next is to avoid cliches unless you are adding a spin to them, because I've noticed this is an uptick in a trend that a lot of people really like, is people taking a cliche that's kind of overdone and kind of twisting it a bit. No knight in shining armor saving me, no, unless it's a girl. Nice spin on the cliche. I like it. More of that energy. Use science to enhance your story and not to be a crutch for your story. This is a similar issue in fantasy where magic kind of solves everything. If science can kind of solve anything in your world, then there needs to be a reason why it's just not used. And if you're writing a science fantasy, same thing. We have a world that is advanced, it has tons of science, and then also it has tons of magic, and there's still issues. What is the reason behind that? Is that your primary villain? Is it the thing that's holding people back? Is it something in society? Is it something politically? What is it that is keeping magic and science from being used to their full potential to solve all these issues if it is so far advanced and so strong? And there honestly should be reasons why there is a cap on magic and science advancement, because it creates conflict. It creates depth. And if everything in your novel can just be solved by magic or by science, then like kind of what is the fucking point? Next tip is to mix genres if you so please. Please, more science fantasy. I fucking love it. Spaceborne is definitely on that bridge of science fantasy. My last tip is to make it fun and to have fun and to make it accessible. If you love it, make sure to write it and to read it and to enjoy it to its fullest and leave tons and tons of reviews. People really say that science fiction doesn't sell, and one of the reasons for that is that it's not seen as accessible. It is seen as something that is a higher caliber of writing or more confusing for people to understand. And that's why so many agents are asking for accessible sci-fi, because they want people to be able to enjoy it without having read a million science fiction novels before. They want people to be able to have entry books into the genre so that they can eventually go and read books that are higher and more difficult and higher or whatever else. A higher level of reading, I guess, is what people think. So I encourage people to make more accessible sci-fi books so more people can enjoy them. So if you noticed, some of the biggest franchises in the world are science fiction, but they say science fiction books don't sell. Why? It's because movies and TV shows are a little bit easier to digest, and they're able to do more genre blending than traditionally publishing was welcome to. But now there definitely seems like an uptick of this genre blending, especially in sci-fi, and there's more people asking for accessible sci-fi. Why? Because people want to sell it, they want to fall in love with it, and we see that all the time with things like the success of Star Wars or Star Trek. So I ask you, give the people what they want. You don't have to. You can make some really super difficult and literary and hard to understand and read novel if you wish, but why would you wish to? I want to read more sci-fi, which means it has to get published, which means make it more accessible because that's what people want, but also because my brain can then understand it. Thanks. My hope is that the more we talk about these sci-fi tips, the more accessible we make things, the more diverse that we make science fiction, and the more open we are to reading and writing it, the more publishing will notice and the more science fiction books will get sold, and we will stop hearing the phrase sci-fi is a hard sell. Because obviously that's not the case in other publishing paths like self-publishing, so why are we capping ourselves in the traditional sense? But that's it for me today, so make sure to subscribe for more writing videos every Friday to help you put the magic back into writing. Catch you guys next time, so bye!